As I mentioned in a preface of the Mass, today we celebrate the feast of the dedication of the Lateran Basilica. That should leave you asking just one question. And what should be that question? Why? The question is why? Why are we celebrating the dedication of this one church over in Rome? There are literally hundreds of churches in Rome. There are thousands of churches in Eastern Europe, hundreds of thousands of Catholic churches around the world. What makes this one church so special, the Lateran Basilica? Well, it's part of our history. Going back near to the beginning, Jesus acquires 12 disciples. And he sends the disciples out of the mission territory so they can acquire even more disciples, even more followers of Christ. This was so effective that even after Jesus is crucified and resurrects and ascends into heaven, his church continues to thrive with those disciples trying to gather even more members. It's in 49 AD, for the first time in a town called Antioch, that this group of people following Jesus and his commands and his dictates and his dogmas are called Christians for the first time. Now, what you have to remember, all this is occurring within the confines of the Roman Empire, and it was massive, and it was strong, and it was popular. Now, the Roman emperors, one by one, started to realize something that they didn't like. Before Jesus Christ, everything the Roman emperor told his subjects to do, those people living in the confines of the Roman Empire, they did it. But as this Christian sect, this cult, this sect, this religion, the Roman emperors, they weren't exactly too sure what was going on. But as this thing is growing, this Christian idea is growing, now the Roman emperor begins to realize what? There are a lot of people who aren't listening to what I have to say because they're following the dictates of this Christ. Therefore, they started to do what? They said, I have to get my power back. And the only way to get their power back, they would have to start to persecute the Christians. We got to stop this group before it gets too large. Now, in the Roman Empire, cemeteries were located under the ground. They were called catacombs. Now, in these catacombs, you could not make any noise. These were sacred burial locations. You weren't allowed to make any noise. You weren't even allowed to be arrested. So these early Christians realized if we celebrate a service, celebrate the early form of the Mass above ground, the Roman soldiers could come and try to kill us or do something to derail our efforts. So they realized prudently what? We will go into the catacombs to celebrate our service to Jesus Christ, to celebrate our Christian follower, Christ himself. So they went into these catacombs. Now, those folks who weren't Christians, they started to have a little phrase, a little word for those folks who like to go down into these catacombs and celebrate their Christian faith. They used to describe these people going down into the catacombs for safety purposes and to celebrate Christ. They used two Greek words, and they put the two Greek words together. The first word is the word kata, K-A-T-A. The Greeks don't have a C in their alphabet, so every time we have a C, they usually use a K. Kata means down under, and holos means to be whole, to be united. And they started to say these people who are going in these catacombs, they're under the ground, and they seem to be united together. They have one purpose, that's to celebrate their faith in Christ. So they put these two words together, and it comes a kata holos, and they rephrased it and came out Catholic. So they started to call these folks that are going under the ground to celebrate these services of Jesus Christ, they call them Catholics. And since this was occurring in the Roman Empire, they then call them Roman Catholics. That's our history. That's how we got started. Now, it was in the year 313, Emperor Constantine finally. Now, Constantine's mom, Helena, became a Christian. And it rubbed off on Constantine and all the emperors prior to that, they weren't following Christ. They weren't Christians. They wanted to get rid of Christianity. But Constantine, since his mom was Christian, he became a Christian. He realized this persecution of these Catholics, this is wrong. So he issued what was known as the Edict of Milan, granting religious tolerance or religious freedom. And see, the Roman Catholics under the ground celebrating these early masses, they were now able to come up out of the ground and celebrate their masses openly. And Emperor Constantine went to see Pope Sylvester, who was the Pope in the year 313, and he said to Pope Sylvester, now that I've granted religious freedom and liberation, as an outward sign marking this, I would like to build a symbolic church, your first church above ground. And he said to Sylvester, how big would you like me to build this church for you? And Sylvester said to Constantine, how big can you build it? I want it to stand as a structure equal to any structure in the Roman Empire. So we can be equal in power, equal in majesty. And the church that was built, St. John Lateran, the Lateran Basilica. That's why we celebrate it today. That's why of all the Catholic churches in the world, this one has such significance. It is our mother church. And it really is a church showing that what the early Christians didn't have, what we have in this country, is religious freedom and liberation. We can celebrate as we want. You got out of your car, you walked into this church, you didn't have to worry about anyone persecuting you because of that style of freedom to celebrate our religion. Now, I thought it would be nice this morning. I actually tried to figure out how we can all go over to Italy this morning to check out this St. John Lateran Church. But I said to myself, I don't think we'll ever get back in time for the Steeler game. So I nixed that whole idea. And what we're going to do this morning is a happy little priest. We're going to see this video and just take a little look at St. John Lateran Church. Again, this is our mother church. This is a church that symbolizes religious freedom that was gained to the Catholics, Roman Catholics, by the Edict of Milan.
Hey, we're back in Rome, everyone. Ciao. We're here standing in front of the Basilica of St. John Lateran, dedicated to both St. John the Baptist and St. John the Evangelist. The Basilica di San Giovanni in Laterano is the first among the 4 major basilicas in Rome. In ancient times, the site of this cathedral basilica was occupied by the palace of the family of the Laterani, the Lateran family, hence the name of the church. It's the cathedral of the Bishop of Rome, who is the Pope. And so this church is known as Omnium Urbis et Orbis Ecclesiarum Mater et Caput, or the Cathedral of Rome and of the whole world. Built by Constantine the Great in the 4th century, San Giovanni in Laterano was the first church to be built in this entire city. It contains several important relics, a 13th century cloister, and an ancient baptistry, San Giovanni in Fonte. Many important historical events have taken place in St. John Lateran, including 5 ecumenical councils. Back in 1929, the Lateran Pacts, which established the territory and status of the Vatican State, were actually signed here between the Holy See and the government of Italy. The Lateran Palace, which is attached to the basilica, known as the Patriarchate, was the Pope's official residence all the way up to the 15th century. Right now, the offices of the Cardinal Vicar of Rome occupy that Lateran Palace right behind the basilica. The Pope, of course, resides in the Vatican. However, he traditionally celebrates the Holy Thursday evening Mass of the Lord's Supper every single year in this, his cathedral. St. John Lateran retains, internally at least, the original plan from the days of Constantine, a large rectangular hall with an impressive nave flanked by double aisles and then terminating in an apse. The emperor seems to have desired a building that would rival the Roman meeting halls of ancient Rome, which were called basilicae. In fact, this basilica has provided a model for the majority of Roman church buildings. Today, standing before its 18th century facade with this crazy Roman traffic on every side, it can be pretty difficult to imagine this as the center of Roman Catholicism. Before we go, I invite you just to glance upwards. Towering against the Roman sky, a statue of Christ the Redeemer, flanked by saints and doctors of the church, Jesus displaying the cross of his triumph. From outside the cathedral of the Pope's Diocese of Rome, the Basilica of St. John Lateran. Ciao for now, everyone. Ci vediamo presto.
That is naturally just a short glimpse of our mother church, and you can go online and learn a lot more about the Lateran Basilica, but it really is a church, the first Catholic church built above ground, taking the Catholics from out of the catacombs to celebrate Mass above ground. And every time I think about a church does what? St. John Lateran Church, St. Margaret Mary Church does what this bridge does on a daily basis. You see that bridge? Now that's the Trenton Bridge, also officially known as this George Stewart Bridge. But that bridge, maybe some of you already travel on a bridge already this morning. Probably most of you travel that bridge once a day, once a week, definitely probably once a month. But a bridge to me is always a religious experience. So the next time you go over a bridge, be it the Trenton Bridge or the Schmidt Bridge over in New Kensington, whatever bridge it might be, think about what that bridge actually signifies. A church is what? This church here. This church, what we're trying to do for all of you, what the Lateran Church tries to do, is to take you from where you are here in this earth to where you want to be, heaven, to get you to the other side. And that's what that bridge does right there, the Trenton Bridge. When I start off on that bridge going from the New Kent side to the Trenton side, I have one thing in mind, to get from where I am to where I want to go, and that's the other side. And then when I go from the Trona back, I always feel a little happier because now I'm going back to where I really want to be, back to Lower Burrell. But it's going to take me from where I am to where I want to go, and that's the other side. That's really the great importance of the Lateran Basilica. That's what St. Margaret Mary Church does. And the next time you get on a bridge, before you start across, say to yourself, this for me today is going to be a religious experience. Every bridge is, because a bridge does exactly what a church is supposed to do. Take you from where you are to where you want to go. That is the other side.